Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
As we move into the summer, we always have a lot of activities that we enjoy outdoors, and of course one of those for so many of the people here in the Northwest is boating. And so we're very pleased today to bring you we feel is a very outstanding guest and program dealing with boating safety. We want you to enjoy yourself, but to be safe. And I don't believe we've ever addressed this particular topic on our program in the 32 years. So I welcome to the program Dave Creetall, who is an instructor in boating safety and educational programs. He works for the Idaho Parks and Recreation Department. Dave, welcome to the program. You're so nice to be with us and to give us this time, and I know our viewers will be safer after hearing some of your instructions.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the opportunity.
And it's always I'm pleased to have regular panelist Erna Reinhardt, who is the Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and she will commence today's questioning.
Hi, Dave. Welcome to the show. It's
Thank
a
you.
pleasure to have you with us today. Let's start by having you explain to our viewers a little bit about your background. You work with the Idaho Parks and Recreation Department, so tell us a little bit about your background and what does the Idaho Parks and Recreation Department have to do with our waterways?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I've been in boating for quite a few years. I started out as a young person and then had a little lapse when I got up here to Idaho in the early 90s and discovered what beautiful water we have. I got re-involved with boating at that time. I also have become a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary and have attained a rating of a coxswain, which requires about 2 years of training and on the water and classroom as well. I then went ahead and moved into an instructor's position and started teaching classes with the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And then I had an opportunity to work with a former member of Parks and Recreation, Doug Strong, here in Coeur d'Alene. And when he moved into a position in Boise, I applied and was fortunate enough to receive that opportunity to come to work for Idaho Park and Recs.
Great, wonderful. Tell us about the jurisdiction. I know that there are all kinds of rules and regulations that we're going to get into in a minute, but how do you know on what body of water you're on? Who has jurisdiction over those waters?
The local sheriff's department, through the Marine deputies that are attached to or part of that department. And I would recommend to anybody traveling through the state, as you get into different watered areas, to check in with the sheriff's department, and they can tell you whatever local ordinances might be in effect.
Great.
There's a book that you gave us, and it's a wonderful suggestion. In fact, I might hold this book up for our viewers to see.
Thank you.
This particular one is about boating in Idaho, but this booklet, it's in a lot of states, but the company that published this, and there's just a little difference from state to state.
Yes.
And in the table of contents, one of the many wonderful sub-areas, but one of them is to know your boat. And so our viewers have, those that do have very different sized boats, from very small ones to probably yachts. So would you share with us some of the things about what you should know even before you go out on the water about the particular boat that you have?
Well, one of the first things that we like to share with people is the fact that boats are determined by lengths. We have a category A, 1, 2, and 3, and each one has certain specific requirements for not only the weight that's carried within the boat, but in particular like fire extinguishers. How long a boat requires certain different types of fire extinguishers, or more of them, one of the two. So that's really important. And then what we'd like people to become aware of is just some basic terms, so that as you hear someone call out something, you're familiar with it, or it's not a new word to you. So we like to go through that process as well in the early stages. And we also talk about the different types of motors involved. We have the inboard, the in-out, and the, of course, hang on the back outboard motor. So we like to acquaint them with that and let them know, in particular with those that have an inboard or in-out type of motor that's basically an automobile motor that's been modified to be in a boat. And by doing that, although the starter looks like the same starter that's in your car, you can't put it on your boat because it needs to be shielded so it can't let out sparks. And we like to bring that to people's attention because it's very tempting to go for that automobile starter because it is less expensive. Anything that says boat on it, there seems to be a little increase in the price. And it's human nature to try to save money, as we all do. But in so doing, you might put yourself into a bad position of possibly igniting some fumes in the engine compartment, and then you'd have a real big problem. And also, if you take anything other than a marine qualified part and put it onto your boat, you may be jeopardizing your insurance. You'd have to check your individual policies to make sure about that.
And in knowing your boat, I'm sure that the size has a lot to do with maneuverability and all. And there's things that you might be able to do on the water with one size boat that another one would put you in danger.
Actually, what the biggest problem with boating is you have to maintain control over it. And that's a process of throttle and steering. Now granted, sometimes if you have a twin engine boat, they are sometimes more easier to maneuver, oddly enough. They are usually a bigger boat, but because of the versatility of the two engines, you can basically turn the boat in its own distance. So it's a very easier boat to handle. What I find happens most frequently is that when someone is new to boating and they go into docking their boat, that's always a little strain. You're tense and you're afraid of bumping it and looking bad to perhaps some friends on board. That what happens is that you start to lose your perspective, you get a little bit anxious, and you push the boat into reverse, and when you do that, the steering's reversed. So what happens, instead of running away from the dock, you sometimes run into the dock. So I have a real high-tech device. I tell them to take an old liquid soap container, rinse it out, and then take it out into the water with you, fill it about half full, and practice with that like it's the dock. And then take it out of the water and come back, and docking's much easier. It's also good on relationships.
Okay, thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
You must know me, or you must have seen me out on the lake.
Actually, I frequently hear that about, I know, the significant other person in the boating family doesn't get exposed to it as much as she would like or he would like, and then they find themselves in positions of not really knowing how to operate the boat. And that other person on the boat is your first line of defense if you have a problem and you need some help. That other person operating the boat is really an important thing to do.
It's that docking that's tricky, and also getting the boat down the ramp if you're trailering your boat.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing as if you're going out for the day and you get onto your boat? Are there some things that you should visibly go through, either mentally or physically, a checklist kind of things on your boat that you should take into consideration before you even leave the dock?
Oh, no question of it. If you're trailering your boat, which about 80% of all boats in the country are trailered, so it's nothing unique to Idaho, it's really important to check your boat at home before you leave. Start it just for a moment to make sure that it does start. And I say that because if something happens, you're home, your tools are there, the refrigerator full of food is there, and everything else. So the best place to check your boat is in your driveway, and then go down to the dock. That's the best thing to do. And by all means, I really recommend a checklist. Sit down and write one up, or we have some that we could share with you too. And then once you get down to the dock, make sure you have everything out of the car and in the boat before you get ready to launch it, because in the busy summer months that we're coming up on here in the not too distant future, happily, there's usually a line of people anxious to get in the water, as you are. So to have someone blocking that ramp while they're putting in the ice chest and the extra clothes and so forth is a little annoying.
Are there certain things, Dave, that are required, such as you mentioned a fire extinguisher, but also life jackets?
Absolutely.
Is there a list of maybe a few things you can let us know?
A life jacket for everybody on board and one throwable is always recommended. In some boats it's mandatory depending upon its length. And I would also recommend that if you have guests, that you show them where the life jackets are and they're easily accessible. Now that doesn't mean keep them in that nice clean plastic wrapper. It means take them out of the wrapper and have them accessible, and that have them try them on and make sure they fit. And if your family has life jackets, assign them a life jacket so they know which one is theirs, and maybe put their name on it. It has to be Coast Guard approved, good order, and easily accessible. You have those things, you make the Marine deputies real happy.
Awesome. Good ideas.
I was watching a program not long ago, and I believe it was on 60 Minutes, and it was really a disturbing statistic that there are a number of deaths every year from the fumes from the
Carbon
skiers.
monoxide.
Yeah, they're back behind the boat or they're swimming, and it's maybe odorless. Or so please share with us about the engine itself and about not being too close to those fumes that they pass out and even drown, because especially if there might be a loan and they're anchored. So what should you look out for? And what shouldn't you do in relation to being outside the boat close to the motor?
First thing you need to do is pay attention to if there's any wind. And you want to put yourself in a position so that the wind is blowing whatever fumes there may be away from you at all times. This all came about by an incident at Lake Mead a number of years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago, where a family on a houseboat lost 2 young boys, 8 and 11, because they were out back of the boat. The exhaust was running out the back of the boat, and they were running a very small engine so they could watch TV and keep their microwave on and the heater, pardon me, not the heater, but the refrigerator active. And they lost their 2 boys as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning. So wind is very important, and if there's no wind and you still have that need to run that little extra generator, you might want to consider not getting in the water, or at least perhaps maybe just idling the boat so it's moving. We do have some days on our waters here where we have no wind, and it's just really, you have to pay attention, you have to be really vigilant about that. And I really recommend, if people have young children, it's not the time to go swimming unless there's some wind to carry that fume away.
So, and it may be hard to determine if there is a little or a significant amount of wind. So, is it the safest thing to stay a distance away from where you would get the fumes from the engine?
Yes. There's a number of manufacturers now that are building boats that have the ladder off the front of the boat, off the bow, as opposed to off the stern. So if you don't have that, then it's fine, get in the stern and get around to the bow. But make sure, if it's young people, make sure that the parents are paying attention, or at least one parent is really focusing in on the kids if there's a couple of families with you boating that day, which is usually the case. You know, as soon as you get a boat, you have more friends than you had before sometimes. And sometimes when you're in the process of getting a boat, you think about your friends because you know that they would enjoy that too.
Sure.
So,
before going back to another subject, and states are different. You and I talked before the program about what some states require, other states don't, the legal requirements of boating. Share some of that with us about, do you have to have anything special, class or training, or can you use your regular driver's license to drive boats? What are some of the requirements? We have viewers in 7 states, and we have viewers in Canada, so I know that they're not all under the same regulation.
Yeah. Right now, just in summary to your question, there are 34 states that have mandatory boating education, and
so you cannot operate a boat until you've had that education.
Until you've had a class of some type. Now, the classes are offered in each state, usually for free or minimal amount of money, and it's if they have to rent a hall or something like that, where the fee comes in. The United States Coast Guard and the U.S. Power Squadron also teach boating courses that are approved. The difference is they have to buy the materials, so those costs are passed on to the general public. Some states have a license endorsement, so if you have a driver's license and you take a boating class, you get an endorsement. We do not have that.
If you have to have that endorsement on your driver's license, is it like getting a driver's license? Do you have to go out with an instructor and show how you drive boats? How
demonstrate? No, not at this time. You have to show that you've taken a course, and I'm paging back here in the boat.
But you don't have to take a driving test, we'd say, with boating?
Not at this time,
okay.
No. Now, what we do here in Idaho, certainly what I do, is, for example, people new to boating will come to our classes, and I'll ask that question, are you new to boating? You're a new boater. Yes, I am. Have you run your boat yet? No, I haven't. Okay, if you like, I can go out with you, or I can arrange it for a Coast Guard auxiliarist who's qualified as a coxswain to go out with you and help you with these things. It's just an orientation. It's much like getting a new car, with the exception of this backing up thing, and then it's like parallel parking in a way. So we really recommend it, but we don't see enough of that.
But in Idaho at this time, there's not, or Washington, either one, they don't require a education course for boating.
Washington it's in legislation right now. We'll find out. Oregon has it. They've had it now for 3 years. It's quite a lengthy process because it's done by age groups. They take one age group and they say between this age group and that age group on these dates, you have until this time until you can finish your tests and get through the courses. It's not rocket science that we're talking here. It's a basic information. I tell people once we get the vocabulary established and everybody knows what red light and green light means, we're about halfway through the course. So once you get at ease with that, And we do some simulations. I have boats, little model boats, and I'll give you a boat and you a boat and 2 or 3 other people. And I'll try to set up a scenario where I know that you will probably end up in a congested position. And they say, okay, now fine. This is in a classroom. What is it that you should have been doing that you perhaps didn't remember to do? And we usually get a little bit of a laughter over that. But it seems to work. People leave and they have okay, now I understand why there's horns and why people should use them. Things like that, which we probably don't do enough of here.
Well, that leads right into what my question was going to be, some rules of the waterways in terms of, and I don't know if these are set rules or if these are just guidelines, but give us kind of a summary of what some of those guidelines are in terms of when there's other boats coming, you're supposed to go a certain way, and how far should you stay from docks and those kinds of things. Give us an overview of that.
Be happy to. Statewide, docks is 100 feet. Stay from 100 feet away, and that would also be from, if you saw another boat in the water, you try to stay 100 feet away from it. Space available. Now, like if you're in a narrow channel, you can't stay 100 feet. It may not even be 100 feet. So that's when you would need to use some horns to let people know. But on the water, what marine people look for, marine deputies look for, is reckless behavior, not unlike on land, and excessive speed. Those are the things that kind of make them start paying attention to that boater. We do have speed limits on the water. During the day it's 50 miles an hour, and evening it's 20.
Is that true in almost all states, or is it just Idaho?
No, it's pretty much nationally.
Okay.
Yeah. And now the other thing that we do is if you're coming up on a boat from behind it and you're going to pass it, you should, if you want to pass it on its right-hand side, is hit the horn once for about 4 seconds to let them know that you're there, because they're driving the boat. They have that noise. They have a conversation going as we are now. So there's some distractions. And the last thing you want to do is all of a sudden, here's another boat next to you. It can surprise you, and it can lead to some problems depending upon the conditions. So 1 horn is passing you on the right-hand side, 2 is on the left-hand side. That's pretty basic. If you're coming head on to each other, everybody takes a right turn and gets out of it. If you're traveling forward and a boat's coming from your right across to your left, they have the right of way, which means that you need to turn and go behind them, or slow down and turn and go behind them. That's a red light. If you look in the book, you'll see that there's red light and green light. The red light is on the left side of the boat. And if you're running the boat this way and you look off to your right, you'll see that left red light on that boat. That's your red light. You go behind them. You're halfway through the course.
There you go. How about nighttime? Because nighttime boating is very different than daytime boating. And I know we have been out on the lake ourselves, and especially when the sun is going down, it's very difficult sometimes to see across the water. And so there's some things people should be cautious about at nighttime, right? Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. The first thing that you want to do is make sure before you go out at night, when you're launching your boat, that your lights work. The red light on the left, the green light on the right, and the white light in back. Make sure they work. It's really critical. There have been some accidents because the white light didn't work well, or for some reason was modified in a way that couldn't be seen, and one boat would hit the other from the backside. Not a good night. The thing you want to remember is if you're on the far south end of the lake moving up, that everything, as you get closer towards Coeur d'Alene itself, all the lights are there, and your depth perception starts to diminish because you have all these lights and it's hard to see anything in the water. You're going to be operating slow, 20 miles an hour or less. And if for any reason you have any suspicions that there's been any floaters in the water, some deadheads, some logs or something like that, you should have a light out in front of you to see. Because although at 20 miles an hour it may not poke a hole in your hull, it might take your prop off. And that's embarrassing and costly at the same time. And plan what you're going to do. Think ahead of the boat. I recommend, under those circumstances, that if there's going to be some conversation, that it be away from the person running the boat. They have to focus on what they're doing. Now, if you're used to being out on the water, you can do more. But one of the things that the water does to people is that there are stressors that we get. And the stressors are the motion of the boat, the rocking that the boat does, the wind, blowing of wind, or just the wind that you create by motion, the noise from the motor. And then, of course, one thing that we don't seem to do a lot of is drink water. We need a quart of water every hour, and we start to dehydrate. So between stressors and dehydration, your reaction time is starting to go down, and it goes down pretty quickly sometimes. So I can't tell you the number of accident reports I read where the person said, I saw it and I just couldn't operate the boat. Their reaction time was diminished because of stressors. So drink water. If you're out there and it's at nighttime, you're getting cold, get a jacket on, get rid of your shivers, because we get them. And just operate slowly and conscientiously. And by all means, if there's someone out there, a knucklehead, and we never run short of them in any recreation, let them go do their thing. Break away. Take the safe avenue. Like I tell people that we have, in our terminology, we have stand on and give way. And stand on is if you're running the boat and I'm going to pass you, that you don't do anything funny. You just maintain course and speed by standing on course and speed. Otherwise, you're giving way to that boat. And I tell people you can be stand on and dead right. What you have to do is let your conscience be your guide. And if you see some behaviors that you think is a little bit out of where your safety zone is, alter your course, let that other person go about their behaviors.
And of course, it's obvious a rule that you never drink alcohol and drive a boat.
Yes.
You stay sober, and that, of course, that's like automobiles. That's caused an awful lot of tragedies by drinking and operating a vehicle. Also, I'm going to get on another subject in a minute, but also, being courteous is so important.
It is.
And sometimes when someone's out there operating a boat and they're being very, very safe, and someone is being irresponsible, comes by and creates really large waves and can cause accidents, can it not? And I'm sure there's rules and regulations against doing that, even though it happens.
Yes. The primary one is what we refer to as a no wake, and that's in a harbor or docking area. Where is it you have your boat launched from?
Foss Marine.
Okay.
Foss Maritime, whatever, the northern end of the lake.
Right. Okay. So you know about the docks and the slow operations. People interpret or choose to misinterpret no wake. They'll say it's no wake or 5 miles an hour. And the only way you can tell if there's a no wake is to turn around and look at the back of your boat and see if it's making one or not. Granted, there are some hull designs out there that you could creep along and it will make a wake. It's just the design feature of the boat. But certainly that's of the most concern, because people in a no-wake area, boats are bumping up against the docks and things like that. And those people that have a boat with a cabin, we'll just take a hypothetical here. It's a lovely Saturday morning and you're on board your boat. Your significant other says, I'll go down and bring us back a cup of coffee. You're down there. That person's down there getting the coffee. Someone comes through, makes a wake. The wake hits the boat. This person drops coffee in their lap. McDonald's Hamburgers paid a handsome fee for hot coffee, and that can happen to you if you create a wake. And it has happened. And there's court actions every year brought about by no wake. So it is a serious thing. The Marine deputies are very much concerned about that. They do their utmost to do this. On the water itself, you're not supposed to be getting any closer than 100 feet from each other if you're speeding along. There are some people that sometimes think it's fun to splash you. It's really not fun. And those people, when they're caught by the Marine deputies, have an opportunity to come and talk to the judge about that.
Yes, and that's a sober thing if they get to go before a judge. One of the things, we're getting close out of time, about 4 minutes, but this has been wonderful about how our sequence has gone. And someone's out, and not necessarily their fault, that something happens to the motor, the engine, or there's some kind of emergency. Would you take us through some of the boating emergencies and what they should do to, you're trying to get to shore and be safe, and maybe it's getting dark and it's late.
First thing we'd like to suggest to everybody is to have a radio on board your boat, a marine radio. You can get a handheld marine radio for less than $100. That's more than adequate. And the reason we like this is because Marine Channel 16 on a VHF Marine Band radio is what we're all listening to. When I say we, I mean the Marine deputies and certainly the Coast Guard Auxiliary, because we're out there on the weekends with them. We help in those areas that we're allowed to. Keep a cool head. Explain what it is that the problem is that you're having. If it's late at night, we might ask you questions like, well, what does your compass say? So we know which direction your boat is pointing. Keep a calm head. always when you go out, prepare yourself for those rare occasions that you might have a problem. So take extra water, take some clothes, and let us know where you are, and we'll come get you.
And that's much better than the cellular phone, because a lot of times you're in an area where you're out of contact with your cellular phone. Although it's okay to have one there in case that
in some cases, you know, some of the new cellular phones have a 911 GPS on it, which means you hit 911 and hit the enter key or whatever the connection key is on your cell phone, and you get a global positioning transmission to the satellite, and they'll come right back and say, here's where you are.
So in buying a cellular phone, that'd be a good thing to look at if you're a constant boater also.
Or if you're upgrading your system, if you have an older phone and you feel like you want to buy a newer one.
Erna, we have about 2 minutes.
How about safety tips, Dave, for kayakers and canoers? Because that's a growing sports recreation field.
It's a great recreation.
What should those guys watch for?
Yeah. First of all, they have to know that they're low in the water and hard to see. And I know myself as a boater, I've come up on them and they were just all of a sudden they were there. I also kayak and canoe. I prefer kayaking. I would say if you can, go with somebody else so that there's more of you, a greater chance to see, and stay close to the shoreline unless you're making a beeline across the water. You are a boater too. You are responsible. You have the same laws as any other boater. A lot of times people think because they're in a different type of boat or a floating vessel that their laws are a little more liberal, and they're not. They're the same thing. So travel together. Bear in mind, if you're at the west end of the lake and the sun's going down, really difficult to see you. So don't put yourself in harm's way. Look around and see what your environment is and adapt your recreation to that environment. Should work fine. And tell a friend when you're going and when you're coming back. And that's for all boating.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Good.
such an excellent point, because so many times people don't, and if they're not coming back when they would, you wouldn't know where to look for them.
Yeah.
On that note, Dave, we have to bring our program to conclusion, and on behalf of our panel and our staff, we thank you so much. I am very convinced that this program today has given great suggestions to the lovers of the water and the boating, and so we do those programs to try to be helpful, and certainly some of these suggestions I'm sure will be adopted, and others have already been by other viewers, I'm sure. But again, thank you and good luck in your work and also in your classes that you're doing, so that people can have recreation and enjoy themselves very much, but do it very safely. Ladies and gentlemen, we so hope you've enjoyed our program on boating safety, and we'd like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time, and we will discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.